Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith and Candelaria Thompson.
Hello.
How are y'all doing?
My shoulder hurts. Not
Oh,
my
yeah?
day.
Okay. Seems very
Very good.
loud. Let me see. That's just me.
I can't tell.
It's kind of weird. Weird sound. What's that?
Oh, yes.
What
Yes.
What's
We
wrong?
have to welcome our wonderful new listeners from Grand Bahama, Edward Fields.
Okay.
You know, we were just broadcasting to New Providence, but now we got the second city.
They never told me that.
The second city is on board, so welcome to all of our Grand Bahama listeners.
Who
Glad to have
told
you
you
here.
that?
I have my authorities,
Okay,
my
all right.
sources.
Okay. Well, good for you.
It's on the up and up.
All right. Cool.
They're listening.
Very good. Well, we're happy to have them.
We're thrilled.
Yes, and maybe we'll have to do a show from the ports one of these days. What do you think of that now? Yeah, you all know about that. How to talk about that. Ken know about that. I mean, you know about that. Yeah. Yeah.
What makes you think we don't know about that?
You know about the ports? Hey, you've heard that statement
port?
before? The ports. No, not the port.
The port.
The
various ports?
Yeah, like
No.
Freeport, the ports. Ken, you've heard that term before, right? Yeah, that was.
That's his homestead.
Yeah, exactly, man. Y'all going by the ports? Yeah, that's what you say. You're going by
No,
the
that's
ports.
what you say.
Oh man, it's a big
No,
thing.
but we're happy to have our Grand Bahama listeners. This is really exciting for me, for all of us.
Yeah.
How was the weekend, y'all? You know?
Had a good
You
weekend.
know? What you do in
Had
all
a
this
good
rain?
weekend. Huh?
I said, what you do in all this rain?
I don't know what rain.
It ain't rain by you?
What, yesterday?
Saturday and Sunday.
So, hold on
Yes, boy.
now.
There's a
It
lot of
rain, girl.
Yeah, lots of rain.
Torrential.
I
I worked
tripping
on
out, eh?
Saturday. Yeah, you be in a dazed state.
Oh, you mean in the evening?
No, it
All
rained all
day.
Saturday.
All
On
day.
and off.
I went
yeah.
to summerfication and it wasn't
it
rained out.
It was spotty. It was spotty.
Yeah,
it was
like I
weird.
don't
Shower.
remember it raining
Yeah.
all day. I
It
was
was
out and
funny.
about.
I was
Yeah.
at Nemo. on
No, but it was
Gladstone Road.
raining,
It was,
but
it
not
was
like
torrential.
y'all making it sound
Yeah,
like
had
we
some-
No,
can't
it
go
was.
out.
I tell
It
you,
was.
Y'all
not how
out
we
west.
making it out.
No, y'all out west. That's a different. Y'all is being
No,
a
some
whole
people told me
different.
there was
Some people
east.
from the east said they got a
Yeah.
lot of rain too.
No, but y'all admit that
No, I'm not admitting anything.
out
Sorry,
west
for sure.
y'all have
West
a
and
different type of
southwest.
weather than out east, right?
Y'all
know that, right? Y'all know that, right?
No, I don't.
Oh yeah. Y'all do, by the way. Y'all
okay.
do.
Okay, we do. Okay.
Yeah,
It's always like hurricane season out there.
You ain't lying though. You ain't lying. For real,
It's
it's
always
storming
every
out
time
west.
I listen to my sister, oh goodness, where's this wind, the rain, current off. I'm like, well, y'all
Exactly.
keep that over there.
You ain't lying though. It's so true.
I think the power goes off in the east more though.
No, listen,
Let me
I
say
don't
the
think
powers
so.
go off. See, you ain't know because your generator's clicking quick.
Yeah.
It go off
I'm not-
plenty in
I'm
the
not
west.
It
feeling-
does
I'm
go
not
off a
feeling-
lot more.
I
I
got the
think I
generator.
feel.
Yeah, I'm not feeling bad about that. Okay.
No, you don't
I
have to feel
swear
bad
to
about it.
you-
I'm saying you don't feel it.
I have some friend, my sister included, and some friends that live
Knows
out
that a
west.
lot.
I swear that their power went off at least once every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree
every
with
day
that
of the week.
100%.
Mine did not go off
100%.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
This year?
just last week.
Oh, okay. They
See,
must be-
every
they
time
must be doing
I
some
set my
testing.
clock on my microwave, I come back home.
Hey, don't set it no more.
I
That'll hurt
give me
your
a
feelings.
whole clock and just put it up. Yeah, ain't nothing
Yeah, no,
happening
for
with that.
seriously, y'all.
It goes out a lot.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Did you see those pictures
Oh.
of the system yesterday?
What was on Facebook? I mean, not Facebook. Was going around on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Would look like something from out of a,
I know
a
it was.
movie.
Did you see it, Kendra?
I don't even know if that's real. That's the only thing.
Apparently, yes, because let
Why
me
does
tell
it
you
real
why
leave
I
Photoshop?
feel like it was real. Which this was one of my topics that the topic that I was
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about today. But it was taken from two completely different areas. You know what I mean? There was one from the water.
You saw it, Kendra?
There was a picture taken from the
show you
water,
this
and then there
before
was
my
a
phone
picture
dies.
taken from, I think like not Prince Charles, someplace. But it was two completely different areas showing the same exact kind of
I
system
don't
from
know what
different
that was,
angles.
boy.
So it had to have been real,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it had to have been real.
I don't know, boy. That looked like something out of a movie.
But you know when people you put filters on these pictures, and then you think that it may not be.
Okay.
Oh yeah, show. Did you see it, Ed?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not.
I will show you. Would you like to see it?
Certainly.
Okay.
So I see that it's interesting that we have the ports online now. Because, by the way, we haven't done this in a long time. You can also listen to us on what is that, 966?
No.
960? Yeah, I saw that.
Channel 960. On
960 on cable.
Bahamas.
Or on, what do you call it?
Stream
on kiss96.streamon.fm. We would be good like that. And plus, we're on YouTube's. You know, plural.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah. There you
But,
go.
no, since we are talking about Freeport, I see where the Oban deal is aired again, come to
Being
the fore again. They say that they are going to fill in the gaps,
Take a-
so to speak, and to correct all the errors. So it'll be interesting. That'll be a big debate. You know, and that's what's going to happen. You know, like we had the VAT debate last week, and that was like volcanic. But then now, you know, it'll be Oban again, so that no one will remember about the big, you know,
WAP.
the WAP. You know, and so on and on we go with just, you know, moving from
right
crisis
along.
to crisis. You know.
Mm-hmm.
What's this
Or
now?
what's that?
Oh, and Mr. Flower says he's not
Not
firing any staff.
anybody.
You know what? I was so proud of him for coming out. This was
Yeah.
on Friday and releasing that press release, because say whatever you want to say, that was very measured, and that's the kind of approach I expect from somebody who is level-headed. I was very disappointed to see these gaming operators just immediately saying, "Oh, we're just going to downsize," and as if, to me, when you're talking about letting someone go, like that should really be like the last resort, okay? Because these are
Right.
people's livelihoods. But it almost felt like, in my estimation, almost felt like blackmail. Like it was always a little too jovial. They felt happy to let these people go, or to threaten that they were letting them go. That's
Well,
Or they
that's
just
how I
found
felt
interesting-
about it.
Just
Yeah. What I found interesting about Mr. Flower's statement, first of all, is that initially he was very opposed to it.
He was.
So, but you know, but it's indicative, and I say this. I'm going to use this as a generic statement. We are not an analytical country. Okay, we are
react.
very
emotional
reactionary
reactor. Yeah.
and very visceral, very emotional. And I'm going to make a bet, and I would challenge anyone who wishes to come, that almost everyone, because it's not possible. I've actually read the budget line by line, and I can tell you one thing is not possible. It is not possible to react to that budget in earnest, in an analytical way, whether right or wrong, in 2 hours after hearing it. Okay, it's just not possible. Okay, it takes a lot more. And first of all, just reading it isn't even enough.
Yeah, you're right. You
Okay.
got to go back and
You have
reread
to,
that.
but not only that,
dissect
there's
some
you have to
lines.
apply
You need
some
explanations,
some you know, modeling and all. There's a lot of things you have to do. This is why in fact I was on a meeting about local government with the New York office there, and they have a thing called the IBO, which is the Independent Budget Office, which is kind of like the Congressional Budget Office. And what they do is they take the budgets and independently they analyze it to see if it meets what they're trying to achieve. And this takes weeks. Okay?
So when
2
you
hours.
asking the general public to like decipher through
Listen, I don't want to base no one down, but what our maths thing is?
What
the
the
maths.
national?
Yeah, what it is?
it ain't even about yeah.
No, it is about that. Because
Yeah,
let me tell you, if you
it's
can't
a
go 1
com-
+ 1,
It's a combination of
you ain't got budgetary.
But to the point that
You know
you're
what I mean,
making,
Jen?
though, you have people who are not even reading
No, they're
the
not
budget,
reading
right?
it, no.
And I was just reading Peter Turnquest. He was heckled at a graduation
Right.
about because he was bringing up VAT. I don't know that was an appropriate place, but anyway, right? My opinion.
It might have been affecting
my
on the college
opinion.
kids and the job
Right.
place. on that.
You could pare that down, right? Okay, fine. But to his point, he was saying, are you actually taking the time to read the budget and
people to raise
understand
their
it?
hand.
Yeah. Are you even taking the time to read this budget? No, people are listening to the talk shows and they're just going off of emotion. Maybe it's easier for them to understand when the talk show host breaks it down. That might be what's happening, but you still have personal responsibility to go and sit down and say, you know what, I hear what they say, but let me see what it's saying for myself. You know what I mean? And not just react off of what X or Y or Z has said. You know what I mean?
If I say to you tomorrow, what is this? What's something you like? What is something
Food.
you like? Food. If I say to you tomorrow
And money.
that you can't have any food, right? And you're just going to yell. Now, you may not hear me saying, because the food supply, we found out that the food supply is poisonous. Okay? You're not hearing that. You know, he say he can't have no food. You're taking food out of people's mouth.
Literally.
Yeah.
Taking bread out of
Okay?
my mouth.
But you're not hearing, this is why I gave that example in the first instance about the candy of going into a kindergarten. And I mean it, and this is in the truest sense, and saying to the children, listen, got something I got to tell you. We're not going to be giving candy anymore. You're not going to get a good response. Also, if you ask to consult about the candy, you're not going to get a good response. Even though you may explain to them, listen, we've got the scientific studies about the teeth rotting. No, they're not into that. So it's a very difficult thing, and I understand it. I understand the emotive thing. 12%, $100, that's $12. They can do that maths. Okay, so that's immediate, right? But you know what they're not doing? And this is the sad part about the analysis. And I'm not saying that's why Julian and I spoke about this the other day. What about the other side of the equation? What about the fact that every man, woman, and child who bought breadbasket items before, right, paid 7.5% more, okay, and now will not pay anything on that additional, right? What about people who couldn't afford to go to Miami to buy clothes? And maybe come August or September this year, maybe the cost of clothing will go down because duty is going off of clothing. That means 20% has gone off. Okay? And retailers, by the way, who have millions of dollars. I spoke to one retailer who has millions of dollars sitting in customs, and he hasn't sold the stuff yet, but he had to pay that duty up front. Okay? What about the fact that every man, woman, and child who buys medicine was paying 7.5% on the medicine and now will not pay medicine? And then I hear these snide remarks like, well, why I get the, it's just like everything is you can't concede. That's why I applaud Mr. Flowers, because he conceded a point. He said, you know what, I have to wait. He's not saying it's right.
Right. And he may have to let some people go. But that's not the first thing he's jumping at, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
I don't think that if things get tough, I certainly expect him to make business decisions, right? But what I'm saying is I respect and appreciate the level-headedness to go into it and say, okay, like you said, to concede the point, let's pause for a minute and let's see what happens. It's too early to be just making judgment calls.
We got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue the conversation. Our guest this afternoon on a different note altogether, because I finished with that. I mean,
you finished with what?
Well, I'm not now. I mean, after we finished with it, I wanted to do a rhyme. I finished with that. And when you say what? What? But anyway, we'll be right back. We'll talk about some more what. And then we have Tennille Burrows on the show for this afternoon, talking about a very touchy subject. We'll talk with her when she gets here. Bye. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith. Candy Thompson is also here with us.
You had your Cheetos break?
You can't eat them on the air.
No.
Oh yes.
Crunch.
I would just say that's some station error. But going back to this thing about. And, Rogan, I'm going to say this to you.
Say this to me.
And I want people to hear what we're saying, and it's not about us.
It's never about us.
But why, when we decided to do this show, one of the things we said was there's a lot of noise out there, and we have to find a way to differentiate ourselves. And it's about making sure that when people are driving home, I'm going to keep on repeating it, and listening to this, that they're getting a kind of perspective that doesn't just appeal to the fear and to the emotions and all that, as opposed to just basic information that you can make a decision. We had Julia. I say a lot of people don't approach me about stuff. We had Julian on Thursday, and how he explained about the IMF first. Okay.
That was a great education.
All right, because it's like the IDB. When we learned about the IDB, right?
When we had
we throw these terms around all the time. The IDB and the World Bank and IMF. We don't know what the heck they do. We don't go. You don't go to the IMF to deposit nothing, or to the World Bank. Excuse me, I want to make a deposit. No, we just know about these things. But he crafted the structure of the IMF and the impact of the IMF in a way that basically said this in a nutshell. if you have to go to the IMF to borrow money, you're in bad shape. And the kind of austerity that we think we're undergoing now
As a joke.
is
to what
nothing.
Yeah.
Okay?
If you went into their program.
Because essentially what you are is when you go, and I don't know how many people understand this term, but it was used widely in the last couple of years, is essentially your country goes into receivership.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's correct.
And when you're in receivership, you don't have control. Okay? They're controlling it. No, you need to get rid of these 1,000 people.
Yeah,
No, you
from the
need
civil
to do that.
service.
No, you can't
You
get
better
that.
do it.
No, you can't do this. Otherwise, they pull the loan.
I think precisely.
Then you can't pay your loan. You think.
What do you say? It's like the advisor. It serves as an advisor. Go back to their group and say they ain't willing to do this, this, and this.
Well, that's before you get to that point.
yeah.
Then you get to the point where you have to borrow from them.
Yeah. But they may not lend you the money.
Exactly. Oh, they'll lend it to you because it's like loan sharks. See, a loan shark will always lend you money. But you have to throw 500% interest on that.
Yeah, but,
you can't
you're not
afford
going to lend
But
money
guess
to
what?
some
When
people
you-
who you know you're not going to get the money
paid
back.
No, but you don't give them all. You don't give it to them all one time. You know.
Still.
It's like that. They don't want like that. They control the money, and you have to ask them when to spend it. They don't just give you money.
and let you go spend it on,
No.
spend it on election.
You have to call them
And say, "Can I spend the money on this?"
Listen, we need some medicine, like some penicillin and thing.
Because the people.
Because the people they diseased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you know. So anyway, the people them. So no, it's he framed it very well, very simply, and now I think that certainly I readily admit this, and I hope a lot of other people have an understanding of what it means if we don't get our financial house in order. And you know, we're going to find out. We're going to find out what the deal is in the next 6 to 8 to 12 months. We'll know. You know, and the government may have to make adjustments, etc.
I want to ask you before we even come up this topic. What were you and Candy? What was your perception after reading the reports about these threats to fire people from the gaming houses? What was your initial reaction?
My reaction, to be honest with you, I was not surprised. I mean, I think that people try to muscle, try to, you know, influence, if you want to use the word. You can use other words with it.
That's precisely what it is.
But the reality is that ship has sailed. And so then what it looks like is, what are you doing? Now, they may have very valid reasons, don't get me wrong, for having to do that.
Oh, really?
Okay,
No.
they may. They would have to, in the same way that everyone's called upon government to show the analysis of why they got to where they are. Well, then we'd have to know the analysis on what they got to where they got
maybe
to.
it was some dead weight that they wanted to toss overboard.
I can tell you one thing.
Maybe that's what
You know
it
how
is.
you know? You know how you always know? Let me tell you how you know. Anytime you have a recession and people get rid of people,
They always want to get rid of those people.
guess what happens when there's no more recession? It's a quiz.
No, I don't have time for you, Mr.
You don't have
Wonderful.
time for me?
Mr. Wonderful.
You ain't got time for me?
It is so annoying.
No, don't be annoying.
And condescending.
No, it's not
Yeah, he
condescending,
does
and
that all the
it's not like
time.
this.
I
There's no
have
heads.
worked with this
There's no
man
heads
for a
going
long,
on.
long time.
No,
So
your
don't
neck
put
is
me on the
moving.
spot
Your
like
neck
that.
is
I don't
moving.
like stuff like that. Just
And you
answer.
know what, Candy? No matter how many times I tell him that annoys
Yeah,
the hell out of
I
me,
don't like
he
it either.
continuously
I've got to
does it.
continue to do it.
No, don't do it to me, because then you can get this on the air.
I will
It
just
is.
look at you.
Yeah.
It's
So
annoying.
listen.
Because
Here's the
that's how I
deal.
can get into
Here's
my
the
phone
answer
and
then.
start sending
Here's
my
the
text.
answer. The answer is they don't get hired back. Okay, when you have a recession, right? Look at what happened in 2008. In 2008, in the United States, they had a major recession in terms of, the economy was sunk into major recession. Tons of people got laid off or fired, right? When the economy rebounded, those people don't get hired back in those same jobs. What happens is those entities find a way to become more efficient and to widen their margins. That you hear that people make more money over the next
And to be
and
to
they
be
become more
without
efficient,
them.
and so they don't need it. So if you have, for instance, a phone operator who was answering the phone, well, after you get rid of the 10 phone operators, you then buy one of them. What you call them things? Them systems.
Automated system.
Automated system. If you dial a number 1, dial 2, dial 3, and dial 4.
But I would also think that unless the aim really is just to get rid of, to shed some dead weight, that if Candy is the operator and that position has become redundant, that I look for other areas in my organization that I can place Candy in rather than just putting her on an unemployment line.
Well, again, that may be true.
It depends on the employer and how dedicated they or
and
how
that's why they
committed
may be
feel to
doing the
their staff.
evaluations, right? But also, too, you might say, okay, well, there are three things: accommodation, staffing, energy are your biggest costs, right? So when you looking to get rid of expenses, that's a big one. You're not looking to transfer; you're looking to get rid of. So that's the thing. But it's often used. People do it when a time of they can use that as cover.
Yeah.
But you know for sure that it's not actual when the thing bounces back and those people aren't brought back. Okay, that's why I always didn't like this term layoff. Because it kind of makes you feel like it's only temporary.
Yeah.
No,
you're fired.
it's layout forever.
It's fired.
Okay,
It's
terminate.
never to return.
Yeah, severed, separated.
Wow.
So anyway, hopefully those folks can be absorbed into other areas. And by the way, and I'm not defending Marlon on this because he would be the first to say he used the wrong
Yes,
terminology,
so don't
right?
say that.
But I'm going to say this. Hopefully people will find jobs in other areas that will pay more than minimum wage.
Precisely.
And that might have been their opportunity to move on because people get trapped in certain scenarios. And they feel like, well, this is it. They're secure in that position. So maybe now that they're forced to find other areas that they can find better opportunities in.
I absolutely agree. This is why it's so important, no matter what job you're on, for you to constantly train and upgrade your services, your skill set. You know what I mean? If you're looking at your job, I always say, let me look around and see who I'm surrounded by. If they had to make a cut today or tomorrow, am I going to be on the chopping block? What do I need to do to make myself more marketable, more
Not only
skilled?
that, you find the gaps that need to be filled.
Yeah.
There are gaps, and if you are aware enough, you would make yourself valuable in that way.
Precisely.
You want to be in a position where when you lose or leave your job, because you could just leave it because you're disgusted, that you could, in a couple of weeks, you could find another job.
Yeah.
Not because there are abundance of jobs available, but because you have a skill that people
need and they want
exactly.
that. Yeah.
So but we'll see how that pans out, And then there's one other adjunct to that, and there's this rumor that, and it's a rumor, that Mr. Robinson is going to be speaking in the House of Assembly, and they don't know they don't know what it's about. So that's more mystery. That's probably good for another 6-page.
What 6 pages, Mr. Fields?
Just 6-pager. Which is nearly stuff. You know what I mean? What you got? 4 or 6
to wrap up the fish.
We have a bet going on.
Okay, 7.
Because it's 10 going. No, it ain't gonna be 7.
7.
No. I'm gonna say it's 4 this week.
Okay, how much we betting?
$10. It's constant 10.
Okay, 7.
All right. So if I win,
you said
even
4.
if not, I said 4.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you should stop on this. I don't think 7 is valid.
Oh, I think it's plenty fish that need to be wrapped up.
Okay, but I just think 7 is uneven. You see what I'm saying? I don't think you can finish on 7.
It's odd.
All right.
So I say 7. You say 4. If it's neither, then neither of us wins.
Right.
Okay.
Unless you call when we play whoever has the closest to under, let's make a deal or what the price is right.
Okay, just call your 2 numbers then. Mine is 6
No,
and
mine is
7.
4.
Let's do 6. I'll do 6 and 7. You do.
No, I'm not doing 4. But if it's 5, I win. If you're 7, you got to be 8.
No, just
you got to be 8.
I said 6 or 7. That's under. I know you all don't know what
you're
we're
not
talking
going to know.
about.
It's too bad. It's a private thing.
And neither do
don't worry about
listening
it.
audience.
We do it our bets off here. Don't worry about it.
Hey,
we in the numbers. We in the numbers. Yeah, all right. See? And that was perfect timing because now we have a break. We'll go to news. We'll come back. We'll talk to you. And then we'll talk to Daniil.
Well, there you go.
Welcome, Freeport. The people in ports don't know. The people in ports.
Hey,
I want to say welcome to you. You have no clue what I have to deal with.
No.
And you, excuse me.
And likewise, what we have to deal with.
No. You're only dealing with what I have to deal with because I have to deal with you. That's how it works. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen in Freeport, welcome once again. And it's going to be quite a ride. You're going to see what's going down between the dynamic, as they say. So, Candy, what's happening?
I'm here. Now, y'all walked into my topic and y'all walk right back out. So I'm
your
not
topic?
even going to. I have a different topic.
But what was your topic?
What happened to that theme song? And it don't play that no more. What
It's
happened,
be in a
man?
new era now.
Yeah, man. No, man.
Yeah, and I gotta
Forget that
kill
because
that man.
my time done. I'm ticking. So leave that.
What was your topic?
No, so my topic was, so much information being forwarded,
Okay.
inaccurate information, and it's on, the personal responsibility. It's now on the
Okay.
receiver to now decipher what is real from what is not real,
And you don't have
to
to
just
decipher
go and
because
do
your
your
boy Trump,
own.
he just is lie. So it don't matter.
Well, we ain't talking about only
Yeah.
things that are about Trump.
No, but I'm
And
saying
those
just
are-
lie. You don't have to
this man
decipher
or
anyone.
something,
People
Brad.
just lie.
Right.
Just in general now,
No,
it's
but when
okay
you
to
want
lie.
to know, when you want to get to the root of something, you can't, go based off of these, what other people are forwarding. Just be aware of, and then people forward that same misinformation and then spread the misinformation. So that was my whole thing. But I
But
come
there
in from
are people,
something
but there are
else.
people who want to believe the lie. Isn't that scary? They want
I
to
don't know
believe
if
it.
they want to
believe it. I
believe
think
it,
they're
but
just gullible.
I think they just don't know any better.
I just feel like they're gullible.
If I say to you, 5 people got killed on
That's a
Montague.
that's a possibility.
Okay,
Right,
on
so
Montague.
that's a
And
possibility
then
in
someone
this
comes
town.
and says, that did not happen.
Right,
And they show the time and there's witnesses, no, it didn't happen, and there's no one in the morgue.
right.
And the people say, well, no, that's fake news. It
let me-
happened.
Because you have a lot of people, sorry, Candy, who are conspiracy theorists, and so they
I try
they
to
believe
figure out
that
who
you're trying to
said
hide
this
They're
is-
something.
Well, anyway, you
This
started
might-
it. Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
sorry,
do
sorry,
your
sorry,
thing.
No, so anyway.
Move from that
So
guy.
over the weekend, I don't know, y'all are y'all familiar with and this is in New York now, this killing of this 15-year-old boy, Junior. This is the whole hashtag Justice for Junior. Anyway, there's this 15-year-old, right? Now, how I first learned about the whole incident was and y'all know I grossly detest and hate when people forward these videos, but this was on Instagram and the actual showing of him being murdered, right? Being dragged
By
out of
whom?
a store by 5 different people, dragged out of a store and brutally stabbed. I mean, they have the cameras of the store showing all of this, right? So this is now, circulating, and I mean, the amount of it went viral.
Great.
So, but you know how, we have talked about in the past how it's, passing this video and stuff around is just so vile and so you shouldn't do it. But the mother, I think if they had not done that, I don't think, all right, first of all, the mother wanted the video to be spread because she wanted these 5 men to be caught, right? And so I'm trying to, I guess the topic is about how social media is really a double-edged sword, right? I mean, you can use it for, sometimes you hate it, and, you have all this misinformation and things like that, but the amount of public outcry and awareness that the video, I mean, it touched people in such a way because the murder was so brutal that they finally made, they caught
The guys.
well, see, now this is where the misinformation comes in because I've been following
catch
this.
the guys?
Well, one guy, but at
Okay.
first they were saying they caught the 5 guys, and
Okay.
then so you have to kind of decipher, you have to sift through the information because one media house is saying they caught 5 people, and then the next one is saying,
They say several
they only
arrests are
caught
made
right,
now
but
in
only
this
one
way.
person is in custody. So that goes back to the original topic, the amount of information. It's like information overload. And you get misinformation and all kinds of incorrect information gets caught up, and so you have to then go and try and
CBS,
research.
NBC, or ABC.
What's that? No, but for instance, huh?
I go to CBS, NBC,
Sometimes
ABC.
CNN could report. Okay,
No,
well,
not CNN. CBS, NBC, or ABC. That's where I go.
Okay.
They tell the facts all the time, and when they don't, they come back and say, sorry, that was not the fact.
right. Okay, there you go.
Boom. I
Top
definitely
eight,
ain't,
it over.
I definitely ain't checking nothing on this. Because that stuff could seem so real. You got your Russians doing stuff. You got all kind of people doing stuff.
Yeah, but
CBS,
now,
NBC, ABC.
yeah. Well, now with the when I first saw the whatchamacallit,
The video?
the video,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't
On that.
from one of those
No, of course
credible.
not. Yeah.
You're right. So
But once you want, if you want, there are credible sources. I think that's the thing. all of us should know by now where there's credible sources. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, CNN may get it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but then they will correct it.
Right.
Okay? As opposed to, Rogan's blog.
No, I'm
You
not.
know,
No.
or
So,
whatever.
for instance, right, because I was following this case because it affected me greatly. I mean, my husband was like, Candy, please
Yeah.
put the phone down because you are obsessed with this
Mm-hmm.
case, this particular case, and I don't know why, but anyway. But like in reporting to him, because I'm keeping him up to date, right? I would say, there were 5 people. Oh no, but the New York Times is saying there was 6 or 7 people. No, and then you keep going, back and forth.
Did you confide with Lester Holt?
No.
Okay. Excuse
Oh,
me.
Lord.
Hey, but listen, you know what Lester reminds me of? I'm sorry to do that.
I started to digress. I
Yeah, but that's right. But no, I'm going to tell you what Lester
But I
reminded
hated
me
that.
of.
I hated having to
Bert
go
Nady?
back and forth.
You know Bert Nady?
Yes.
Bert and
Which
Ernie.
one is Bert?
Bert
is
is the one with the
head.
long
The long head?
with the
That's what
little-
Lester's remind me of. Bert.
Except Bert has
With the
I've
little
never
butt.
seen a head as long as Lester, man. Sorry about that, Candy.
But no, I mean the back and forth and the trying to get the facts right was exhausting. It's exhausting.
Yeah. It's
was
in her
like-
mind now, by the way.
What's that?
Bert.
The Bert. But so that's why I'm saying
No, you
that
gotta
whole
listen.
it is exhausting now.
We should listen.
Because
We should
everybody's
be,
reporting
yeah,
the news.
but we should
That's
be,
the problem.
But we should be savvy enough, Candy, that where we have been. Listen, this isn't new, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have been dealing with social media how long now? 10 years. 10 years, maybe, right? In its earnest, to the point where Facebook now has an ad. I don't know if you've seen it on TV.
I'm not on the Facebooks.
But on TV they have an ad on
I'm
TV.
not on the TV.
I've never seen them advertise on TV.
Yeah, I've seen.
They have an ad on TV that talks about what we started off to do.
The intention and
is
what it's
gone.
Yeah, what
Right.
it's
And we
turned
now
into.
have to get back to what is real. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So we should be savvy enough if we don't want to get sucked in to things to say, okay, I see that. Let me check that. See, just like how we learn how to do other things.
I
we
know,
how
but
to
it's
do
so
the
much
insta-
all extra steps now.
No,
like,
no,
because-
don't give me that because we extra stepping all over. We checking this one. You got 50 different kind of gram and shots and snaps and all that. Okay, so if you can instead of chapping or snapping
No,
or tweeting or
I
whatever.
was checking with credible.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
sites.
I'm saying it's not another. It shouldn't be a
Yeah,
big
no, I
deal
wasn't right.
for us to be able to go to a credible site. Listen, you could go easily to MSNBC, Fox.
He's talking about
I know,
local
but-
news. She's talking about.
This was, New
I mean,
York.
well, that's,
No,
that's
I
New York
talked
and
about
them,
in
right?
New
But a
York,
lot of
yeah.
times the things we're getting is about
Right,
what's happening
especially
here in the
here.
Bahamas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the traditional media tend to be very slow in
But not only
reporting
that,
things.
You would think, like, I would, the kind of public outcry that happened with this particular case, right? You know how down here we like to videotape stuff as well. It's no different than it is over there, but it's almost like, what y'all doing with that? With this case, they did something with that. Like, they took that. And I mean, the police
there's
has already
seen
the police
cases
has
where they
already
did
said
something. You remember
they
the-
have never received more, tips and all of these things because the people really came together and that is how they are able to
But we
capture
had the
these
case
people.
the other day where the girl was getting beaten. The police acted on that. I don't know how far they went, but certainly, you remember the girl was
She was
getting beaten.
removed from the home.
She was removed from the home.
Yeah.
So I mean, it happens. I mean, I think things happen. I mean, you see people doing crazy
It
things.
doesn't
The
happen
police
the
officer,
right way often enough. I
Right.
feel like
the
people
police
just
officer
take
who
it.
did the thing.
What's that?
The drinking.
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel like people just take these images because they want to be the first
they
to
want to be
report
the
it.
first
Yeah.
to
That's-
report
that-
it.
it gives them a
That's
high
what I'm
to
talking
know
about.
that-
Everybody
Send it.
reporting the new, everybody
Yeah.
reporting something.
Yeah.
So
And the first inclination nowadays is pull out that phone.
Not
and
even
instead
to
of
help
helping,
the person.
not to
That's
help.
the crazy
Exactly.
thing. A coworker of mine was talking about when this man was in his car after a car accident. He was dying.
Yeah.
And
And
rather
they're
than
just
try
narrating.
to help, they're narrating.
Narrating.
That's perfectly
That's the
said.
truth.
Holding up the camera as
Yeah,
you're drawing
yeah.
your last
He's-
breath
he's,
and narrating. Or he's taking his last breath.
Yeah.
And
I would.
Yeah. Someone should call the police. That's
See, now that's
you ever hear that on there?
disgusting.
Yeah, someone need to call the police, man.
But you have a phone recording it. You have a phone. You call the police.
It's like crazy anyway.
You
it's
know,
a crazy,
right?
it's a crazy-
Double-edged,
It's a crazy mix.
double-edged
sword.
sword we have here.
All right, well,
You got
Candy,
high tongue.
thank you. I see you've been to Cape Canaveral. and it's you know, when I was in school in Minnesota, and I said to some people, because they don't know,
I used to trip up on that word so much.
So you from NASA? You from Florida? I said
Yeah,
no. Yes, I would say yes. My mother was a rocket. And my father was a capsule. Anyway,
From NASA.
so you've been to
we hang
NASA.
on my shirt?
No, you've been to
It's
NASA,
nice, right?
National Aeronautics Space Agency, I think it's called.
Yeah. There you
All right.
go.
Well, listen. Thank you, Candy.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith, who I can barely see over the purse. What is that? What kind of purse is that?
That's you slide it
What's
to the
their
side.
name?
Kipling-esque?
Kipling-esque.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can see her. Rogan Smith.
Smith?
Are you evil?
No.
Okay, just checking.
I'm the opposite of that.
All right. You're sweet, eh?
I'm an angel.
Of course. Now, you know, it's very scary when people, you know, you can't call yourself certain things, you know.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I can
you
call
talking
myself
about fake
an angel.
news?
Huh? Yeah, exactly. You can't go like calling yourself like, you know, I'm an icon. You can't do that, you know. You know who did
I'm
that?
a legend.
Yeah, I'm a legend in my own mind. Anyway, we have with us the wonderful Miss Tennille Burrows with us, formerly known. Do you care about the formerly known thing? Have
I
you
care
disavowed that?
The
It
artist
exists.
formerly known
Okay,
as.
formerly known as Tada, in her other world. Do you still do music?
Not actively, no.
Okay, all right. But you could if you wanted to.
I could
Like a
pimp out
backup.
songs
Yeah.
to like.
Yeah, but like,
film
maybe I could pimp out a couple myself.
Good.
Because I didn't know that was a term. Pimp out a song.
I know, but pimping
And
the
you could
ride.
pimp out some other things. Huh? No, I mean, I'm just with the pimp world. You know. But yeah, I didn't know you could pimp out a song.
That's just my.
That's you invented that?
I don't know.
Okay. See, that's the other thing. The youth, them, I think they're just inventing words on a daily basis. And then they come to me and say, "Oh, you ain't hip." Okay, you can't be hip if you're changing it hourly.
You got to keep
I'm
up.
officially not a youth STEM anymore.
Yeah, you're a
Youth
youth son
STEM.
compared to us. So anyway, so people will know Tennille from a range of things.
Oh, yeah.
And I think probably all covered by advocacy would be the word that would blanket that. Obviously had the courageous, the courage, I should say, to
run.
go into the independent running in the election
Political
thing
arena.
in Elizabeth. Did you get your deposit back? I forgot to ask you that.
No, you have to get. I forget what it is.
But you didn't get
Like,
it back.
I didn't get it back.
Would you have gotten a little bit of it back?
No.
I mean, when I say a little bit, like the vote you got, if you had to do a percentage, you would have get
I
some back.
didn't do any calculations.
Okay.
I
Well,
just took
run
2
that
weeks
up
off
for
and
me.
went to sleep.
Went to sleep. That's hard work. And you were in the constituency, eh?
Yeah, and I moved there in April, like I said I would.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to be a constituent now.
Are you still there?
Yeah,
Okay. So you didn't even cop out. You didn't even move out after they
no.
wouldn't vote for you.
I still speak with
Yeah.
constituents and
So
send
you
alerts.
you didn't take it like how I took it when I ran for Key Club.
What happened?
Well, Rogan has heard this story, and it's a little painful for me to say again. But anyway.
But say it
There were
anyway so we can laugh at your face.
There were 19 or 20 people, I think 20 people including me, in the Key Club. I'm going to call names now. I was asked to run by Mr. Michael Digges. He asked me to run in the election. Next thing I know, I was running against him. Okay? So he just needed like a patsy. Okay? So I then canvassed all 20 people. No, all 19 because, 18 because he was running.
Yeah.
And they all said, "Oh yeah, we with you. We with you, Fields." And then they had the election, and the election was 17-3. Not me. And then that's okay. But then I canvassed what you would call like an exit poll
Really?
again, and they all said they voted for me.
What?
So 17 people lie.
I think everyone needs to hear this story before they run for anything.
That's true, and it scarred me. Okay, I'm not running for anything anymore. So you ran, and you obviously at least 5,000 people lied to you, and you didn't take it to heart. You stayed in the
I
constituency.
spoke with 1,400 people in Elizabeth constituency,
Yeah.
so that's only a fraction of the
And how many
entire
votes did you get?
population. 106.
So 1,300 or 1,294 people lie. Did they all say they were
No,
going to vote
I
for
didn't
you?
ask them if they were going to vote for me.
Did they
until...
say they were going to? Did more than
No,
a
well,
okay.
a lot of what a lot of them said. A lot of them said, we're tired of the PLP and F&M,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to know what the platform was and this and that, the other. But
Okay.
at the end of the day,
They still went
we
with
know
that.
reality.
Yeah. Because they've kind of figured out, they've got it
but
figured out in their
someone
head.
did WhatsApp me the morning of the election. Ms. Burroughs, you're the best candidate. You far exceeded all the work by the others. You deserve to win, but I can't vote for you because I'm afraid of splitting the vote, and I can't allow the PLP to come back into power.
Can't take that chance.
Let me ask you a question. At some point did you think that you really had a chance of winning?
There was no way of knowing at any point. Like, how would I even
listening to public sentiment from people, even though you didn't canvass everybody in the constituency. If you feel like the tide is turning and people are really that disenchanted with the FNM and PLP, you may start to think for a second, you know what, I really could take this.
I mean, I didn't have any money, first of all, so you can't launch a fantastic, well-advertised campaign. You could do some grassroots stuff, some community programs and Facebook ads. That's the extent of it. Yeah. So the $25,000 I raised to do whatever I had to do couldn't compete with the whatever figures other people were spending. So the playing field isn't level in that respect. This is why campaign finance reform and things like that are important because we're at an automatic disadvantage just in terms of being able to have the mobility or the manpower, womanpower to get out there and that sort of thing. So you have to go based on data, and data is doing the market research ahead of time and understanding what people actually reply when they're surveyed and that sort of thing. I couldn't call it like that.
Also, when I think anyone who runs wants to believe they could win, because otherwise you just wouldn't do it.
Why are you running? Yeah.
But also, what definitely comes to fore right away is that people have figured out in their mind the futility. They feel it's futile, and they feel that, like you say, I think the word you would, they didn't want to take the chance. That's the big obstacle that you have to overcome, right? That is the election going to be so tight that they can't give any votes away? There are people, I can tell you, I'm not going to call them, who I thought on the PLP side would have won the election.
Yes.
Right.
But they did not win, not because of them. They won because of that same syndrome that you alluded to. Anyway.
Well, let me say this, that I believe I can accomplish things that regular people can't because I'm exceptional in certain ways, but I wasn't going into it blindly thinking that this would be a cakewalk, and I didn't think that it would be an instantaneous thing either. Yeah. So if having not won, I think consistency is also a key about what people pay attention to. So if you maintain consistency and you build a certain traction and you go after those 106 and say, hey, I need help this time, we got to do it together, it's going to be a different sensibility.
Yeah, and I wonder, you'll see. You're going to find, like I said, you find out a lot of things about people when you put yourself in that arena.
Let me tell you what I did win in respects of. I wanted to get people aware about the issues that were important to me: child protection, gender-based violence prevention, citizen security and justice, anti-corruption. So when you go to people's door as an activist or a Jehovah's Witness or whatever, whoever goes to people's door other than politicians, they ain't paying attention to you. If you go to their door and say, I'm running for office, they can say,
Well,
they can open their door and they can let you in and they can listen.
If you're Jehovah's Witness, I will appear in the nude.
You could,
and I've done that.
Before.
And I have done that. That way they don't have to come no more.
It's the
As we wear my shorts and things and make sure they know.
Excuse me?
So I know for a fact that 1,400 people heard those messages and have more awareness. And
that's key. That's the kind of thing we're trying to do here. Is just make people aware so that they're empowered to ask the questions because each one of them can have an impact, if they know. And speaking of which, in the segue that I would make is, you talked about the things that you advocate for, and things like what's the young man, Marco's law, gender equality, all of those things. There's a lot of social issue stuff, and we're here to talk about a very, I think, kind of. I don't know if you hear a lot of people talk about it. Certainly not openly. It's usually behind a dark screen. Because it's weird how even as a victim, you still feel the need to protect people. And it's kind of a bizarre thing in a way. But I saw a post that you had online about that you had been molested when you were a very young person. I suppose the question I want to ask is, how old were you?
5,
which is a very young age, very young. And how does one at 5 years old, and I think this is something that I feel when people are doing this, when adults are doing this, what's the reaction of the child, And what What were you feeling when this was going on?
I mean, the first instance I had was when the person came into the bathroom while I was using it. Because at 5, you don't really lock the bathroom.
No.
And they longed out their tongue in a suggestive way, and I was like, can you leave? Like, and then I told my grandparents, and they fussed them out or whatever.
Right.
But then it went on from there to them inviting me to their room, and they showed me pornography, and pretty much were like, you know, would you do this? Would you do that? Would you do the other? So, I mean, as a 5-year-old, children, the reason that children cannot consent to anything is because we don't have the capacity to consent to anything.
Right. You don't even know what's going on.
No, I mean, it looks some type of way. And because sex is supposed to be something that's enjoyable, you have this mixed feeling of, well, somehow this is intriguing, but it's also very scary because I don't understand it at all.
You didn't even know what sex was? Well, did you know what sex was prior to being introduced through the pornography?
Because you're saying about it now, and it's in retrospect, you know, but yeah.
Around that same time, there was a little animated video that we were shown. Some of my family members and I were shown. But, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because I know the things that... How old are you?
38.
Okay, so I know that the images that people who are 38 saw when they were 5 years old were different from the images that I saw when I was 5 years old. Because when you were 5 years old, did they have satellite TV then?
Probably.
Yeah, because I know people who tell me at a very young age they were exposed to pornography because of satellite. Whereas when I was a kid, you know, you could go to the food store and then they had some Penthouse magazines and you had to... It was just a completely different world. And so what you may have been aware of at 5 years old might have been different from what I was aware of. And I think Rogan's question is, what was your awareness of sexuality?
It was limited.
Yeah.
I mean, at 5 is kind of young to go into details. You always know that they say don't let anybody touch you.
Right.
And I have great parents, so they did all that. But it's just like, if it's an adult who's somebody you're supposed to trust who's related to you, it was my uncle on my dad's side, the youngest uncle. You just don't feel as though, I mean, your guard is down.
You're just confused. Yeah.
You're confused, pretty much.
So, okay. So, because he's more aware of what's going on because he read your post, I didn't. So when this transpired and you were called into the room and you were shown pornography, what happened after that? Did you tell parents or what happened?
I didn't tell anybody. I mean, they always tell you something to make you
don't tell.
Either give an incentive or threaten you, or in my case, I didn't want them to do it to someone else in my family, so it was just kind of like, all right, I'll, take the brunt of it or whatever.
And what transpired after that?
I think I remember them asking me if I would go down on them before. Like, they showed it to me on camera and said, would you do that? And I was like, no. So the touching and all that, I did that, but whenever it came to anything too extreme, somehow I had the savvy to not do all of that stuff.
And, I always wondered how, so obviously...
And my situation is not going to be everybody's situation.
But the thing is, I always wondered about this. So these people who are close to you, they obviously are close to you for a long period of time. So from 5 years old to maybe even now, but certainly to a certain age, in your 20s or whatever, this person is continually around you, right?
I rarely see this person.
Okay, but I mean, where did you stop seeing this person because of family situations like, dinners and picnics and parties? When did you stop seeing that person, say, regularly or frequently?
I don't remember seeing them regularly beyond my childhood.
Okay, so up to, say, maybe 10, 11, 12 maybe, because they moved away. Is that it?
That's a part of it.
Okay, all right.
And at no point then, because I hear you say that you didn't want anybody else to suffer the similar fate. You took it upon yourself to take the brunt of that. But at what point, if at all, did you say something to family members?
I never said anything to family members, but at 12 years old, my parents asked me, and I asked them why they asked me, and I lied to them and said
they asked you if there's something that happened.
Because it happened to somebody else in our family.
Okay. So the person was just a serial molester. Now,
let me say, this uncle probably has some sort of spectrum or something. Like, I don't know if it's diagnosed, but to me it's like an Asperger's or something where they would be in the car and they can't pass the street sign without reading the street sign and some sort of compulsion thing.
Yeah, right.
In my estimation, it's not severe because I remember how calculated and
well, if he's going to go through
very calculated. I don't know if they ever got treatment or how it was addressed. But
right. What go ahead, Rogan. I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to. I just want to continue the train of thought just for people who are listening in the cars and they might want to understand because you just never know who's listening in.
Right.
So, your parents asked you, your mother asked you, if this had happened to you. You said no.
No.
It had happened to somebody else in your family, and then that was the end of it, or did she come back months later?
I admitted it when I was older, when I was maybe 30. I admitted it. And then it was kind of like, well, why didn't you ever say anything?
Yeah, what brought you to say no, just out of interest, when they asked you? What did you feel at that point? Because, I mean...
I was still a child, and I still felt the same issues that I did why I never said anything in the first place. Shame and just confusion.
Right.
But then the fact that I now knew that...
somebody else had been hurt.
That made me angry.
Right.
And what was the catalyst that led you to admit it at 30 to your family?
Because I opened up about it at that time. I started along with some other women, the Bahamas Against Sexual Violence and Child Abuse group on Facebook, a public awareness kind of group. And this was in response to a 5-month-old baby girl having been reported as raped and dying in 2009. So I figured, in order for me to do this work, let me get this off my chest one time so that they know this could be a relentless sort of thing. Because it ain't just this little baby girl who had to deal with these sorts of things. Other people have to deal with them, and I personally had to deal with similar sorts of issues.
You know, when I was in college, I took a psychology course, and there was this unreal statistic I'll never forget in the book, in the textbook, that said something like 1 out of 3 women, 30%, had been molested. And I was going out with someone at the time, and I kind of said that casually to her about this course, and she said, yeah, that happened to me with an uncle. And it just made me kind of come to grips with this thing. And, anytime you hear a number like 30%, like that, which seems high, then you also got to calculate in the non-reported.
Right.
Because even in a poll that's anonymous with something like that, there's a lot of people who not only can't say it face to face, they can't even write it. because it's damage, right? When they have to say it, that's a lot of pain that comes with that. So it's a high percentage, and you wonder, how is this? How do we function socially with this kind of taint?
With a broom and a carpet.
Say again?
With a broom and a carpet.
Sweep it under.
Yeah, but I know that's what we do, but the impact, so it's like this is how you cope. This is how you cope. Remember, we talked about other things like how you ignore certain things because this is the only way to cope, right? To get through life, you just deal with it. Right?
So I'll just plug in here now. The crisis center is the place to go if you need help. If you've ever experienced this at any point, man, woman, boy, girl, it doesn't matter. Call them, look them up online, get counseling.
Yeah.
And then, I feel like we don't really look at
power. It'll come back on. Give me a couple of minutes.
Just another incident. You see how they cut off eyewitness
generator
doing the bad thing?
Huh? Yeah, it's gonna come back on, right?
Just as Candy and I were talking.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Told you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But the one of St. Augustine's on.
No,
we're not on, right? Because the St. Augustine's one for me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the break, Freeport and Nassau, because we just had a power cut, but the backup, the gen set, has kicked in. But by the way, when it kicks back on, does it break again, or just transfers over? Okay. So we're talking with Tennille Burrows, who again has courage on many levels. Outspoken person on Marco's law, on a lot of social injustices. And, of course, who recently ran as an independent in the constituency, Elizabeth. And we're here talking about, and I listen, Tennille and I go back a long way. We go back to the Dada days. And so I had no compunction about calling her when I saw the blog and asking her if, and I knew what she would say because I know she's not chicken, I just kind of knew you would say, yeah. Because for the purpose of helping others. And we're talking about the fact that when she was younger, she was molested by a family, a relative, and how common that must be in our society, and how so for all of us who are, casually going about life, how do we tell? What are the signs, and of when this is happening, so that, and how do we help? How do we as citizens, neighbors, relatives help? Or is it just something that we just shouldn't be engaged in? I don't know.
I think bystander intervention is a problem. You were just talking about how crimes were filmed on cameras, or people suffering were filmed on cameras, and nobody thought to actually intervene or call
they just narrate
for help. Yeah. I think that's something that we need to learn. That's a muscle that we need to build. Don't just stand there and gossip about the neighbors who are always fighting with each other. Try some way of intervening at some point if you think that it could escalate or whatever. Suggest a crisis center to them. The number is 3280922. That's the hotline. Yeah, I think there should be accountability on a societal level and a community level, and until we get to that place, I think it's just not gonna change.
Do you think other relatives were aware?
Probably suspected, or I actually spoke with some of my other relatives who said that they had been approached by him before, and they said he flashed them or something like that.
Yeah.
But this, again, is as an adult retroactively hearing these things because I admitted it to them. They say, oh, yeah, he did something like that. And we just say, boy, get from around here.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were boys.
Yeah.
How did what happened to you, how did your molestation, let me call it what it is, how did your molestation impact your life?
Well, I mean, it took away my childhood perspective. It diminished my view of intimacy and how it should be. I mean, it skewed it. It made me have trust issues. I mean, the people that are related to you, you're supposed to trust. People in positions of power, you're supposed to trust. And it had a multitude of impacts, I think. But most of all, in a good sense, it drove me to try to prevent this from happening to other people as much as humanly possible within my capacity. So there are good and bad. But I don't want anybody else to have to be put in a position where they suffer this just to be an advocate, a champion for the cause.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, I'm not diminishing, and I would never diminish. There are people who go through. It's all horrific, but you know what I'm about to say.
I can't relate to those people. I'm sorry. Yeah. I cannot imagine it. I cannot fathom it. There are unimaginable things.
Because like the thing, like you talk with the 5-year-old girl.
And then the fact of the matter is, these are children, the most unassuming, innocent creatures ever. And you feel as though you have the right. I don't care who you are. You could have birthed them.
Yeah.
You have no right to harm or abuse or neglect children.
So let me ask you, and this may seem unorthodox. So we know that this is good. Like, for instance, you remember To Catch a Predator on TV, okay? Which, the thing that always amazed me is that it's on TV. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about that. So we're here with Tenille Burrows. Thank you once again for Tenille for coming. And
yes, absolutely.
It's a very sensitive subject. I'm glad that I've known you for so long, so we can talk openly about it without any kind of funny feeling. And I think it's important to talk about this stuff without restraint, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But one of the things we were talking off air about this issue is we have the crisis center.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of support groups. This thing continues on and on. And in my mind, we were talking about To Catch a Predator. And one of the things that would always amaze me about watching that program was that there were men who would come on the program and say, yes, I saw this on TV, but yet I drove 300 miles, stopped, get the Mike's Hard Lemonade to come meet a 13-year-old. And as soon as they walked in that house, the same scenario happened that they saw on TV. Okay?
Not to be a scourge against Mike's Hard Lemonade by any means.
No. But it just seemed that was their thing. I don't know why, but it was always their thing. And they had such a drive that despite seeing this on TV while they're typing on the internet, not knowing who they're talking to,
right,
they would still get in that car and go. And so the question I asked then to Neil is, are we looking at how we treat that type of individual? Right now we look at that individual as a complete abomination. And so what we do is we exercise punitive measures, right? We put him away, we put him on the sex offender list, et cetera, et cetera. But we haven't done anything to eliminate that disease, that whatever it is that is driving them. Can you speak to that?
We need to establish an institution for the criminally insane, first of all, to differentiate from criminal acts done by people who have the mental capacity to not commit those acts. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to have assessment tools, evaluation, and treatment options, or if someone is deemed not fit to go back into society, then they just have to be admitted to this institution. But, that takes time, that takes foresight, that takes an investment that perhaps the powers that be might not feel is valid. I think that even if we had something really outlandish, like some sort of system where a psychological agency were in place, and we had would-be perpetrators who might have viewed child pornography or...
Because it's a cycle, right?
Whatever. They know that they have some propensity towards this type of behavior. Make the environment conducive to where they're able to submit themselves for voluntary evaluation,
treatment,
check-ins on a basis, and it would cause them to be accountable. And at least if they know that they have the alternate facility, at least they would actually be getting treatment, and it would be addressed as opposed to them just being put in prison.
I mean, because if you look at, let's say, one of the things we hear about now, sexual addiction. Okay, so we see people who admit to be sexual addicts, who literally, they spend their whole life just watching pornography, having sex with strangers. They're addicted. This is a recognized problem. Mm-hmm. They cannot function. Let's put it this way. They cannot. Right. So we're willing to treat that. We're willing to say, okay, this is something that needs treatment. And so I'm saying, are we so, I don't know, sensitive to this issue that the treatment of these other people are not also as critical in order to make this problem go away?
It's more critical because sexual addiction is not a crime.
It's consensual
sexual
adults,
assault,
etc.
Rape, molestation, statutory rape.
Right.
Those are crimes.
Right.
So if you have some sort of preventative measure or measures in place to address that, from a prevention standpoint, instead of always just punitive or punishment standpoint, then perhaps the statistics over time will change. Until then, it's going to remain the same. And another important consideration is, of course, people are amenable towards this whole Marcos law and what's not. I don't know what the government's pussyfooting around for. Both governments have been. But the harsh reality is it's not most often the predators on the outside that come after children in terms of abuse or molestation.
It's on the inside.
It's on the inside. So that could be the next phase of the advocacy, because right now we got to deal with the people who saying, some strangers got to be punished for doing this, so we got to prevent them. We could deal with that, and then when we cross that hurdle,
them right inside the household.
Yes.
They're right inside the household. I remember last year going into a certain area to get a service done, and I saw this little girl walking by, and the person who was assisting me said, "You see that little girl? Yeah, she's being molested by so many men in her house." And I said, "Where's the house?" "No, I don't want to tell you where the house is." I said, "Where's the house?" So we have an environment, we have a community of people who know things are happening to our children.
Did you hear what you just
and
said?
They choose
being molested by so
several
many men
people in that house.
And they let that just slide.
Yeah, it was nothing. And she knew, based on my reaction, that had she told me it's that house, I was coming back there with the police just to investigate.
Yeah.
That's how serious that was.
Something called a child.
Pick that girl up and take her to the police.
Then you'd be charged with abduction.
No, I would have called someone like I've had this situation before. I would have called someone like Rogan to say, "Come here now, because I need you to be with me, to be witness to,
What we need to have happen is that these neighbors who suspect, they call the Child Protection Unit of the Royal Bahamas Police Force and submit their suspicion as a matter of record. That's what we need to have happen. Don't inbox me and say this is what's going on. Just do due diligence, call the Child Protection Unit of the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
Can they call a crisis center?
They can call a crisis center, but the crisis center deals with victims or would-be perpetrators directly. So if you are experiencing issues yourself, you call the crisis center.
Right.
If you want to report a suspected abuse claim related to a child, you call the Child Protection Unit.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy stuff. One of the things that probably, this is why I have some other issues to see, and I won't say about it on the air, but I don't understand what kind of world we live in, how this can happen. Adults are one thing, because they can hopefully fend for themselves, etc. But when a society, when a spiritual, paradigm, etc., allows for children who have no power to be, and the thing I think about, like you talk about this little girl, right? Mm-hmm. That was her normal. If what those people were saying is true, that was her normal, and that's just beyond sad. Do you understand what I'm saying, right?
I understand.
Like that's what she is. That's what she expects on a daily basis. And I know, Tennille, you've been involved. You're involved with the crisis center, correct?
I have a relationship with them.
Right. I can only imagine. You had Sandra Dean on, I think, the other day, right? I can only imagine what people in social services and people like in the crisis center, the kind of abominations they must see on a daily basis, and I don't know how they deal with it. And
people even sent me the video of the child being beaten on camera. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to watch anything else I don't have to watch. It's not going to help me to be any more motivated to do the work that I do. But I think the Bahamas really just needs to take a look at ourselves, because Nelson Mandela said the true character of a society is revealed in how it treats its children, and I believe that to be absolutely true.
Oh.
So for this to be light news, for this to be some deprioritized something that happens in the phantom wings as opposed to at the front and center. I mean, if we wanted to, as a country, say from a crime and law and justice perspective that we wanted to target one thing in a year, let's start with child protection.
But let me ask you, is it because, and it's like domestic violence in a way, right? Is it because it's happening in the dark? All of these other things like murder and armed robberies are like, but is it because, like I was saying to you, I think off the air, maybe it was on the air, that when it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to child abuse, you've got to figure that in any sphere of associations you have, that this is going on, right? Statistically speaking. But yet, I can tell you that I'm not consciously aware of anyone who I know it's happening to, because it is a dark secret. And is that maybe why it's not addressed the way it should be addressed?
That's you on one hand, and then the lady that Rogan met on the other hand. Two exact opposites. You are oblivious, and she's in the know.
Completely.
The bystander intervention is not where it needs to be. Yeah. We are complicit as a people because every single one of us have somebody that we know has experienced this, and every single one of us, unbeknown to us, knows someone who is a perpetrator of this.
Absolutely.
Let me just say this to you, and I'm not disagreeing with you because I'm not in a position to disagree with you. I'm saying though that I think there's a large percentage of people, especially people who may be in positions of power, who don't know. I think that's a valid position.
I don't understand what you're saying. Don't know what? That this goes on?
No, not that it doesn't go on, but that because it's in the dark.
Then what?
Right? That it's not in their face. That's why it's not a priority.
They have statistics every year. They read child abuse statistics.
Yeah, they read it now.
In 2014, it went up by 22%.
Let me tell you something.
So let's look at that. Let's look at policy. Let's take a break. Let's look at policy. Enforce the laws that you passed 5 years ago.
Right.
That's number one. Marco's Law, the alert, the registry, explore that. Let's get that going. Secondary to that, implement the conditions related to the Child Protection Act that are not currently implemented. The Minors Advocate and things related to child victims. Thirdly, establish a separate sexual offenses and family court.
100% agreement. 100% agreement. I'm saying to you.
I don't care if they see it or they don't see it.
No, but I'm
this
telling
is
you.
Stuff
you
that
asked the question. No,
we've been talking about.
No, you asked the question. Why is it that if there's one thing we can't do? This is the question you asked just now. Why do things don't happen? I agree with you. And I'm telling you, it's like, the difference in diseases. It's like breast cancer has a very high profile, right? So there's a lot of action happening with that.
Right.
Whereas another disease, there's, like hemophilia, for instance. There's some people who are suffering from it, but not a lot. So it's not there. This is the kind of thing that happens. And that's why people like you are drastically needed, because your passion brings it to the front.
But funding
Otherwise,
is also
it stays
needed. Corporate society can get involved and say, hey, instead of giving to this initiative that's been around and strong for 30 years, we could look at alternative initiatives to support. And again, the government's participation is quite necessary. The social development agencies that are already doing the work need to be a little bit more aggressive. If the government giving you $30,000 and then the member of parliament in 2014 just talked about or just admitted to doing something that you are diametrically opposed to, you all need to cough it up, buddy. Because clearly you all don't just ignore that this is a major issue and there's no political will to get these things done. You stand up in parliament and laugh at these things.
But but here's the deal. What is the ramification? This is a hypothetical. I'm not defending anything. What is the ramification to the people based on societal pressure, right? Because you remember you said about the what do you call it? The bystander, the non-intervening bystander. So essentially, collectively, we're not intervening as a society because the politicians aren't feeling the pressure. There are people like you who are pushing, right? But I'm saying collectively, there's not enough of that pressure.
We need the awareness as well, like you said. So a campaign that's widespread. Thankfully, social media exists. So something that would have cost $1 million before, it costs $100,000 now.
Give you a classic example. Me Too.
You too? Okay? I'm sorry to hear that.
The Me Too thing. This has been going on for centuries. And because of one high-profile case, Harvey Weinstein, okay, because even the Bill Cosby thing didn't seem to do it, okay? But all of a sudden, this one powerful man who was attacking powerful women, people who we thought were oblivious or invulnerable to this type of stuff, right? The movie stars. All of a sudden now, boom. That's what I'm talking about. How why these things linger, because there's not enough power, not enough people in power who are driving the process.
And then you look at the grassroots movements like the Tambourine Army in Jamaica, who stood up against, unlike what we did with Randy Frazier, which was diddly squat, they stood up against the pastor in the church who was accused of doing something.
The people, right?
So our people need to get some gumption, some brass steel, something, because plenty women, like you say, around the place in particular, have been subject to assault or violence in their lifetime. So until we decide that we don't care what type of system we in, what type of lack of political will, we don't care about all that stuff, we can make a statement, bold and united, and standing up as hard and as tall and as high as we could stand for the sake of the future generation to say that this is not okay, and in the Bahamas we could change how the thing is going.
Well, I hope, Tennille Burrows, that you are able to continue what you're doing and to get people who have some, I don't know, collectively or individually, some sort of additional oomph, or what do you call it, steel, or whatever you
muscle
use.
Muscle,
yeah, to get this thing going. It's got to stop. Because every year all we hear is the statistics. And that's the other sad part, and I'm going to leave you on this. So it's like a thing. It's like the school grades every year. It's just another statistic that we see in the paper, but we don't see in the...
Minister Jeff Floyd stood up in Parliament, and I watched as he said he spoke with the 24 children of the last Columbus primary school student that was shot by the stray bullet, and asked them, how many of you had seen a gun? Everyone raised their hand. How many of you had heard gunshots outside of your home? Everyone raised their hand. And then Parliament went on as usual.
That's the thing. Yeah. Thank you, Tennille. You'll be back, I'm sure. We'll find a way to get this thing. This is crazy stuff, like you say. The children. That's if there's one thing you're going to protect. You know, I'm going to say this, Rogan Smith, we seem to protect animals more. There seems to be more outrage about animal rights than the rights of children. I'll leave you thinking about that, folks. Ken, Rogan, Tennille, thank you very much.
Yeah.